Welcome to Bible Study with Barry. We're going to be having part 3 of our Heaven series. And if you came here for the first time, you can see part 1 and part 2 on my YouTube channel. I'm having an absolute blast talking about probably my all-time favorite topic. And I'm also in my new home office, and so you can see the things that I love, but I tell you, I love talking about heaven even more than I love talking about football. So I got some great questions after part 1 and part 2. I got questions of about mansions in heaven, and why will there be many rooms, and what does that mean? Will there be rich and poor in heaven? God has an order in heaven. What work will we do? Oh, that's going to be a fun one to answer. Will we sleep? Will we play? Will we eat? Just love those questions. I also had a comment from Elizabeth about those questions. Abel and Chris, we'll be getting to some of those in the weeks to come. But Elizabeth said, "You are stretching my imaginations about heaven." I just love that, because that's one of the goals, to really for us to develop and enjoy a heaven-focused or heaven-centered life in this earth. And also the second goal of this whole Bible study is for you to develop and enjoy a biblically enhanced imagination. So we're going to talk about today is, what is the best part of heaven? What is the best part of heaven? When people think about that, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you give the church answer. Well, the best part of heaven is seeing Jesus, the author and the finisher of my faith. And that's a good answer, but I don't think that's the best part of heaven. Then there's the human reaction. The human answer is that the best part of heaven is seeing my loved ones again, seeing my father, or seeing the child that I buried way too early, or seeing the child that, the son or daughter that I had in my miscarriage. And we will answer that question as well about heaven. Like, man, if that would be the best part of heaven. That's going to be a great part of heaven, but without the best part of heaven, seeing Jesus will be awkward and probably a bit uncomfortable without the best part of heaven that we're going to talk about. Now, without the best part of heaven, seeing loved ones, seeing those who have gone on before you to heaven, who have placed their faith and trust in Jesus, or if they were a child or even a stillborn baby or a miscarriage, seeing people that you love to see or would love to see again in heaven. Without the best part of heaven, those relationships will continue to be challenging and at times difficult. Without the best part of heaven, heaven won't be heaven. Without the best part of heaven, heaven just won't be heaven. So to join me in Bible study, go and turn to the last book in the Bible. Turn to Revelation chapter 21. We're going to unpack some verses of this to really reveal to us what is the best part of heaven. So Revelation chapter 21, look at verse 1. He says, "Then I saw the new heaven and the new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea," all right, any ocean, any remembrance of judgment of God. Verse 2, "I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem," we're going to talk about that in the future, "coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband." Now, look at carefully at verse 3. "And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Look, God's dwelling place is now,'" meaning once again, it hasn't been, but until now, "God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them." With them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the, listen very, very carefully, for the old order of things has passed away. Turn over to Revelation 22, verse 1. And then the angel showed me, he's kind of taking us right into the New Jerusalem, New Heaven. Angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nation. Verse 3, no longer will there be any curse. We'll stop right there. No longer will there be any curse. If you're familiar with my teaching, I like to have a central point that we're all going to talk about all the way around it. The central point is this. In heaven, sin will have no trace. In heaven, it will be eternally impossible to sin. The best part of heaven is that there will be no more sin ever and ever and ever. Not a trace, not a drop, not a millimeter, not an ounce. Sin will have no trace, and it will be, just have your imaginations kind of expanded. Sin will be eternally impossible. We find this in both of those chapters, some verses that we looked at. In verse 4 of chapter 21, the old order of things have passed away. Passed away. That word passed away, it's the same phrase in verse 1 about the first heaven and earth have passed away. Doesn't mean it's disappeared. Doesn't mean it is zeroed out. That phrase, passed away, means it's passed away with its evil and sufferings. Meaning the evil and sufferings are gone forever and ever and ever. That the old order of things involving all evil and all sufferings will pass away, will be gone. No, then it says in chapter 22, verse 3, no longer will there be any curse. The best part of heaven is there will be no trace of sin, and it will be eternally impossible to sin. It's gone. Impossible. It says there'll be no more death or mourning and crying. That's because the old order of things have passed away. What causes death and mourning and crying and pain? Sin. The result of sin. James says that the end result of sin is death. All right? We get tempted, that's not a sin. But when we give into that temptation and we sin, the ultimate path for that is death. Is death. And death and mourning and crying or pain is gone. It's because sin is gone. Sin has been removed. All right? I mean, even in the best possible relationships here on earth, there are traces of sin in those relationships. And in chapter 22, verse 3, there will no longer be any curse, right? Now just think about it. In Genesis chapter 3, when sin came, new things took place that weren't there in chapters 1 and chapter 2 of creation, and then in the Garden of Eden before sin. But after sin came, there was a curse with animals. There was no fear of animals or for animals before sin, but after sin, animals are afraid of humans. Humans are afraid of animals. That's gone. In chapter 3, there's a curse between the husband and wife, and there's been conflict ever since of who's going to be in control, and who's going to get their way. And that all goes back to the curse of sin, the conflict and strife. Early on in the Bible, there were conflicts between different people, different races. I mean, just think about all the race problems that we have, and the fighting and the hurt and the despair and the frustration. That's all because of the curse. You know, my race is better than yours, and you're not treating me right, and my family and your family and my people and your people. There's none of that anymore. The old order of things have passed away. There is no more curse. Just think about work. Work is not a result of sin because work was there before sin. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But with work, there's more difficulty. There's hard things. There's difficult people. There's frustrations. The old order of things have passed away. There's no more curse that has been brought into working. And just think about all the natural disasters and death that has resulted because of natural disasters. The old order of things, the way it's been since sin, has passed away with all of its evil, with all of its suffering. There's no more curse. And what we don't understand is that sin has invaded every ounce and every inch and every body and every relationship of our lives. Sin has invaded everything. You think about it. How we talk is littered with sin. We're talking out of our mouth, but are we telling the full truth? Are we really sincere in what we're saying? Are we saying certain things in a controlling way to get our way? Are we saying things that have a subtle agenda? Are we saying things that what we're really doing is trying to manipulate the person or the situation? All that's because of sin. Just how we talk. And then what about how we think? You see, we can have a smile on our face and be thinking sinful thoughts. We can have a smile on our face and we're nodding, but inside our head, we're like thinking, you're an idiot. And we're being judgmental. We're being critical. We're being harsh, or we're thinking, bad thoughts and we're being untruthful. I was like, okay, I'm going to get them back. And we're starting to scheme, get payback. And no one knows what we're thinking, but our thought life is littered with sin. What we see, we have this filter, all of us as humans, that is a sin filter. Instead of seeing something that's beautiful, it can turn into lust. Instead of seeing something that it should be uplifting, we view it through our clogged filter, and we take maybe what is true and we twist it around based upon our filter of sin. Our love is littered with sin. Are we really loving that person, or are we doing things because we know we want to get something in return? It's not pure. There's a lot of selfishness in love, and that's sin. And you think about just how we live. I mean, we're carrying, all of us are carrying baggage. My second book is at the publishers. It's all about secret baggage. We're carrying baggage from our past and all the sin that we have committed or sin that we're wearing because of other people. And all of our lives are just weighted down with the baggage. And the root of that is sin. And all of that will be gone. Just imagine that. That how we think and how we talk and how we see and how we love and how we live, there won't be any trace of sin. And it will be eternally impossible to sin. Just can you imagine that? Because every problem that we've ever faced is because of sin. Every hurt that we've ever experienced is because of sin, or every hurt we've given to someone else is because of our sin. Every funeral that we've ever attended is the result of sin. I mean, every pain we have ever experienced ourselves or given to others, at the root of that is sin, and that will be all taken away. You see, the best part of heaven is no sin. That's why If we have sin in heaven, heaven is no longer heaven. If we have sin, we see Jesus and his purity and his divinity and his majesticness and is all that he is. With our sin, it's like it's going to be awkward. It could be painful. And sin, seeing our loved ones who have gone beyond, they'll just be littered with problems and difficulties and then pain because of sin. But man, all that's gone, everything changes. And that's hard for us to even imagine because we have never lived a day in our life without being drowning in sin and all the effects of sin. So how is this possible? Well, because God's word is true and God's word will come to pass. God has promised it. Even Isaiah 25, verse 8, he says, God, will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. 1 Corinthians 15, 24 and 26, the last enemy to be destroyed is death. Again, if we go to Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is what? Death. The price, the result of sin is death. But that price was paid for on the cross. And heaven is only for those who have placed their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross to pay for their sin, pay for the wages of sin, and he took our death for us. So when death is finally conquered and this earth is over, we will enter into the presence of God and the living with God and the dwelling with God and God dwelling with us forever and ever without sin. In heaven, sin will have no trace. And in heaven, it will be eternally impossible to sin. So let me just give you 6 ways to imagine this. 6 ways to imagine sin. Now, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're sinning watching this because of my logos behind me. So try to focus that. In heaven, there won't be that problem, okay? But imagine 6 ways to imagine heaven without sin. No trace, impossible to sin. Imagine this. Here's the first thing to imagine. Imagine we will be in heaven where we will be delivered from ourselves. Heaven will be a place where we are delivered from ourselves. Have you ever said to yourself, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Well, in heaven, we won't have to say that. We don't have to say, what an idiot I am. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why? Because we're going to be delivered from sin. And we don't have to say, I can't believe what I did. I can't believe what I said. See, our greatest deliverance from heaven will be from ourselves. Our lies, our pride, our lust, our envy, our jealousy, our anger, our corruption, our self-righteousness, our hypocrisy, our shame, our regret, all of that's gone. We will be delivered from ourselves because here on this earth, many times we are our worst enemies. Our worst enemies. In heaven, we won't have to guard our eyes, because we won't be lusting after, bad things. We won't have to guard our mouth because no sin's going to come out of our mouth. We don't have to cover up our ears like, I don't want to hear that. That's bad. We don't have to do that. Why? Because it'll be internally impossible to sin or be sinned against. Imagine that. The second thing I want you to imagine, this biblically enhanced imagination, in heaven we will be free to be ourselves. We will be free to just be who God originally designed us to be. See, with no sin, we won't have fear. Fear of what other people think about us, right? Freedom to just be free more than we've ever imagined in our lives. We will be free to fully accept and appreciate how God made us. We won't have a list of things, I wish God wouldn't have done this or given me that, or I wish he would have made me like this. All that's gone. We will be free from the fear of man and what people think. We'll be free from the fear of failure. Right? Because we'll just try new things, and heaven will be filled with new things and new adventures, but without fear. Freedom to be ourselves, to say yes and no about things without worrying about the consequences or worrying about, did we hurt someone's feelings by saying yes or no? We'll be free from the pressure to perform in order to be accepted. Why? Because we'll already be forever accepted by everyone around us, including Jesus. See, so many people today are in bondage to fear of others and fear of failure and fear of not measuring up. Imagine a place where you and I are absolutely free to be who we were made to be. And then there's number three. Imagine heaven where worship will be without shame or inhibition. It'll be free without shame or inhibition. Shame is, sometimes it's hard for us to worship God because he knows what we've done. He knows what we did that week. He knows what we've done in the past that we haven't got asked his forgiveness. And so our worship can only go so far because deep down we know we're idiots and we're fools and we're sinners. But all that will be gone. We'll be free to just actually worship God with no shame. But also be able to worship God with no inhibition. So many of us hold back worship to an almighty, holy, righteous God because what will they think if I just worship? What will they think if my hands are in the air, or if I'm jumping in the air, or if I fall to my knees to the ground, if I shout, if I dance and worship? A lot of us don't do that because, oh man, what will people think? All that is gone. Can you imagine just worshiping God and not worrying, not holding back? Whew. Oh. Number 4, imagine this. Imagine where work will be free of fatigue and frustration. I'm going to unpack this a little more, but you understand God gave Adam work to do before sin came. So sin is not, work isn't a curse from sin. All right, but could you imagine work without getting tired? And work that is like, this is awesome. I get to do this for God. I get to build this. I get to produce this for God. And I won't have to be frustrated, with this person. And like, I can't work with that person. They're so irritating. That person, it's just so frustrating. Sin there will be no trace. And it will be internally impossible to sin. So we can just work for the Lord without fatigue or frustration. 5th, imagine this where all relationships have zero conflict. All relationships have zero conflict. Now, the only relationships in heaven are those who have trusted in Jesus Christ as their Savior, that he died on the cross for their sins. He rose again, proving he was God. And by faith, we place it in Jesus, not in church, not in good works, but in Jesus and Jesus alone. So all people who have done that, all those relationships will be free of conflict, zero conflict. You just think about, in heaven, will there be annoying people? No, because being annoyed at other people is a sin, all right? And we won't have that. And there'll be no more fights, no more arguments, no more silent treatments. I'm not going to talk to you. No awkward conversations. No, I'm going to avoid the elephant in the room. There's no avoiding I got to avoid that person altogether. Just all of that is gone, all right? Because all conflict is rooted in jealousy or envy or pride or hate. And that is all sin. But in heaven, sin will not have a trace of it. It'll be eternally impossible to sin. Woo. Number 6, could you imagine? Imagine heaven forever and ever, where all damaged relationships here are perfectly healed, forever healed there. I've heard these quotes before. My father's a Christian, but he is the most angry, irritable man in the world. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother, but I just can't stand being around her. My son and my daughter walked away from the Lord, and our relationship has been severed ever since. We used to be really close friends. Things happened. Now we don't even talk to each other anymore. I never believed in divorce, but I was so tired of fighting, and I'm not sure I love them anymore. Again, all damaged relationships are because of sin, but everybody who is in heaven, there will be no more conflict and hurt and frustration in relationships. All damaged relationships will be fully restored. There was a man in our church, his name was John, and he was on his deathbed and went into his room, and it was just a matter of days. And I started asking him, I said, let me tell you a little bit about heaven. And he didn't know much. And the more I talked, he was like, tell me more, tell me more. And then I said something about his father. And he said, oh, my father, I know he was saved, but I was so disconnected and hurt by my dad. I don't even really know my father. I mean, and my mom loved Jesus, but she was so weighted down with their marriage and all that. And I just said, John, when you see your father in heaven, you'll probably really see the real dad for the first time. And you will have an amazing relationship that you never had on this earth. And that mom that loved Jesus but really struggled and was weighted down, you're going to see your mom like you've never seen her before. She'll be free. And his eyes lit up and he was like, really? Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. In Revelation 21, verses 5 through 7, he said he was seated on the throne and said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. He said to me, it is done. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. Those who are victorious will inherit all this, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. Are you thirsty for this? And he says, all of you who have been victorious, meaning you are in heaven because your faith in Jesus, all of you are victorious and you will inherit all of this. I close with a few of the words from a Faith Hill song a number of years ago called There Will Come a Day. It says, there will come a day, there will come a day, the song will ring out down those golden streets, the voices of heaven with the angels will sing, every knee will bow, sin will have no trace. In the glory of his amazing grace, every knee will bow, sin will have no trace. In the glory of his amazing grace. Are you thirsty for this? I am. And if you're in Christ, you are victorious and you will inherit all of this. Now, the next 2 weeks are going to be so much fun because I'm going to unpack what we will do in heaven. What will we do in heaven and what life will be like on that new heaven and new earth with God dwelling with us. So if you have any questions, why don't you email me at barry@gracepointkidsup.com or in the comments below. You're going to say, hey, what about this? Will we do this or we will do that? I'll do my best to answer them. It'll be so much fun. Can't wait. But the best part of heaven, now you have an answer. You can share the best part of heaven is sin will not have any trace and it will be eternally impossible to sin. Bring it on. May God bless you. Bye.